What's up, guys? So today's video is another bad film review. Today's is going to be 2017's The Mummy. So let's get straight into this. Alright, really quick before we begin, as I normally do with these videos, if you haven't seen one of these bad film reviews that I do before, basically I take a film that performed poorly, sort of a critical sense, and got low scores on like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. I then rewatched that film and I score it myself, I critique it myself. I break each film down into 10 different aspects, I guess. Those being script, casting, acting and directing, the cinematography and the editing, set design, soundtrack, visual effects, the costuming and makeup, its accuracy to a source material or originality as a new thing, and then its marketing as well, because obviously if you've got a good trailer and some good marketing, people are more likely to go see it, and by the same token, if it's got a good critical score, people are more likely to go see it. So I think marketing comes into that as well. And then I score each of those aspects out of 10, giving me a total of 100, giving me a fairly accurate percentage for like out of 100. So it gives me a number that I can then compare to the average scores. So for The Mummy, its lowest critical score was Rotten Tomatoes, which gave it 16%. Metacritic was a lot more generous with a 34%. The audience scores, Rotten Tomatoes had a 35%. So the audience for Rotten Tomatoes was 1 point above Metacritic's critical score. Metacritic's user score gave it its highest of 88%. So clearly people that are using Metacritic actually thought this was a good film. And IMDb gave it a very middle range, 55%, giving us a total percentage of average of 46%. So that is the number I'm going to be comparing mine to. So to start off with, the script is a 6. If you've seen literally any of the other Mummy movies, whether that be the 1999 trilogy with Brendan Fraser, or even if you've gone even further back and watched like the 1932 one with Boris Karloff, you'll know that as far as the stakes go for a Mummy film, this is fairly average. So the script itself gets a 6. To boil it down to a synopsis, we've got a sort of a treasure hunter military type, which would have been Brendan Fraser's character in the 1999 film, comes across a tomb. The love interest slash archaeologist of the trip comes along. They uncover the mummy sarcophagus, and the mummy's curse is unleashed on the world. And other than that, the only other thing this film does differently to any of the other ones is try to set up a cinematic universe, in my opinion, too quickly. And so that's where we get sort of the lower end of the spectrum there. Casting, purely just on the actors' credits and their ability to act alone, gets an 8. So Tom Cruise as our main character in this film, Nick Morton. Obviously Tom Cruise is known for Mission Impossible, playing Jack Reacher. He was in Edge of Tomorrow. All very sort of high action films. which I think they tried to give those sorts of sequences to this film because Tom Cruise is known for doing his own stunts. And so this one is a plane crash, is the big stunt, with the camera actually showing the plane approaching the ground at high speed. We've then got Annabelle Wallis as Jenny Halsey, the love interest archaeologist character. I myself did not recognize her from anything, but looking through her credits, she's been in a lot of really sort of high-profile things. She was in X-Men First Class. She was in Snow White and the Huntsman. She was in the movie Annabelle, the horror film. She was in King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, and she also plays I'm not sure if it's a main character or a recurring character, but she's in Peaky Blinders as well. So a lot of really good credits there. We've then got Sophia Boutella as Armanet. Armanet they tried to make her basically just the female equivalent of Imhotep, who even as far back as 1932, 1939, whenever that first one came out, Imhotep was the mummy. So in that sense, the 1999 trilogy would have a higher accuracy score. But they tried to make it the female. And for her character story, it's basically the same. She sucks life out of other humans to restore herself to, not being a decomposing corpse. And then she proceeds to try and, I guess in a sense, resurrect her lost love sort of thing. In this sense, she's trying to summon Set to the mortal plane so that she can have unlimited power, which I still don't understand, but I'll get to that in a second. Sophia's credits are she was Gazelle in Kingsman Secret Service. Gazelle is the one that has like the sword legs. She was in Star Trek Beyond, and she was also in Atomic Blonde. We've then got Jake Johnson as Sergeant Vale. He was in Jurassic World. He's been in Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. He was in Tag, and he also voiced Peter B. Parker in Into the Spider-Verse. There is a fly buzzing around me. We're going to continue anyway. Courtney B. Vance as Colonel Greenway. He's literally only in this for like maybe 10 minutes. He was in Terminator Genesis as well as Office Christmas Party, and not that this is a testament to his acting credits, but he's also married to Angela Bassett, who is the MCU's Queen Ramonda, and so in my books that gives him extra points, because if he's good enough for the Queen Mother of Wakanda, he's good enough for me. We've then got Marwan Kenzari as Malik. He was in Ben-Hur, he was in Murder on the Orient Express, and he was also Jafar in the recent live-action Aladdin film. So some pretty good credits to him. And then we've got Russell Crowe playing Henry Jekyll. That man's list of credits is literally a mile long. Notable ones of recent years: Les Mis, Man of Steel, where he played Jor-El, and Noah, where he played the title character. And they are sort of the core cast for this film. So some very high profile, very talented actors there, hence an 8. The acting and directing, however, was a 7. I don't think it was the best they could have done. However, with the script being what the script was, as well as particular directing choices that I would have, done differently, I think a 7's pretty good for this one. The cinematography and the editing gets an 8. The only sort of shots that sort of stick in your mind are the ones that they used in the trailers. What I would have done if I had been the one sort of directing or producing this film, when it comes to making trailers, is of course put in some of your big shots, but save some for the actual film itself. Don't sort of go, here's all the good eggs, take this and go, and then just hope that brings everyone else in, because then all you've got left is your lesser quality ones left, and like what happened here, everyone just gets disappointed in the film. Because if you're able to put all of the good parts of your film into a 2-minute trailer, and the film itself is an hour and a half, 2 hours long, you've got a problem. The set design was a 7. The Mummy's Tomb in particular, I think, is a really great set, particularly since it's also an interactive set. So they would have actually had to put all the wires and stuff that raised the coffin up. They would have all had to be able to actually be interactive to get those shots. So I think that one is a really good set. And other than that, it all seems to be filmed on location, so there's not a whole heap you can do. I think the only other set that I really liked was the church scene, where Arminette discovers that the crystal on the dagger of Set is missing. Those were probably my two favorite sort of set pieces. And other than that, yeah, as I said, filmed on location, so there's not a whole heap you can do to make it spectacular. And I think the other thing too is that with trying to allow action scenes for Tom Cruise to be able to do his own stunts and show off that side of his, how he acts and stuff, not a lot of thought gets put into designing interesting sets, because you're not spending a whole lot of time looking at all the interesting little details. And so I think that factors in here as well. So a 7's a pretty good score there. The soundtrack also gets a 6. It's a pretty basic sort of mood setting. There's nothing particular. The way I usually try to score this is, when I say 2017's The Mummy, if no music comes to mind, then there's an issue. I think the only music that comes to my mind is the Universal logos and how it fades into what they were going to have as their Dark Universe logo. So yeah, when the only music I can think of is the production company's opening title, pretty basic soundtrack. The visual effects get a 7. I debated on this for a while, because the visual effects and the CGI and stuff is really good, but when like a solid 60% of it is just animating sandstorms, the budget for special effects was kind of wasted a little bit, I think. Especially in like the middle of London. Somehow Arminette is able to call a sandstorm into the middle of London, and I don't know where those desert sands came from for that storm. That's kind of a confusing point in there. So yeah, a 7. Technically speaking, they were good. just their use and as far as story goes. Can you not fly? Yeah, just their use and stuff is a little bit confusing. Like, why is this a sandstorm? Why is this not something else? You know, yes, the script might call for a storm of some kind, big cloud to settle over, but why not have it be like a cloud of smoke or something from like car exhausts, or like, you know what I mean, like finding something that she was able to call on instead of sand in the middle of London would have made that a little bit more believable. Costuming and makeup gets an 8, largely due to the costumes that Armanette wears. I think particularly for the Mummy, they had a whole lot of freedom in being able to design really cool ancient Egyptian costumes. As I said, they designed a really cool set piece for her tomb, but I think they sort of, yeah, they definitely could have done a little bit more with the costumes, but the costumes were also really good. Everyone else's costumes were pretty basic. Like for the most part, Nick, Tom Cruise's character, wears exactly what you think a military man / treasure hunter would wear. They really didn't open themselves up creatively enough, I think. But then trying to keep it grounded as well, to try and ease people in as far as costuming is concerned, was also lost in the fact that the script tried rushing people in to this whole new universe that they were trying to set up. So then we come to our accuracy score, which is a 7. This one is a 7 because once you acknowledge the fact that Imhotep, a male mummy who was a priest, is now Amenet, who is a female Egyptian princess who, due to the fact that her father then had a son, despite the fact that she would have been like a year away from inheriting the throne, she then gets sort of put down a peg, and her father would have been able to continue to rule until her brother would have been able to take over the throne. So once you acknowledge the sort of origins of the characters are different, and obviously because of the gender swapping they are different, once you acknowledge that, it's pretty accurate actually to the other Mummy films. Obviously this being a remake, them trying to set up the Dark Universe and make those films, they were drawing on previous films. I personally don't understand why they had to give a female mummy. I mean, I guess they could have, you know, that they sort of looked at the characters and were like, okay, so we're gonna have a male Dracula. It's the Wolf Man, not the Wolf Woman. There's going to be the Invisible Man, Henry Jekyll and Edward Hyde. You'd have a lot of male characters, and I guess they didn't want it to be male dominated. But by the same token, what was stopping them from using Mina Harker, who ends up becoming one of the brides of Dracula, as their Dracula character when they finally get up to whatever team up it would have been for the Dark Universe? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's other female characters that already had their origins in their own stories that you could have then been like, this is going to be one of our strong female leads. I mean, I get it, that the god Set is generally seen as male, so having a female devoted to him keeps the sort of, this sort of overhanging threat of she wants to unleash this, but at the same time, like, it's just a woman trying to unleash a man to enact his sort of revenge on the world. So it's not really a strong female character anyway. So I don't fully understand why they had to change the gender. And so therefore, we get a 7 for accuracy. But marketing gets an 8. You are kidding yourself if you didn't enjoy the trailers for this film. Problem there obviously is that the films did not add much more to that other than exploring. I believe the cinema sins, because while I was writing up my scores, I put on the cinema sins just to find out what all the bad points for this film were. It ended up with like nearly 200 cinema sins sort of thing, and the one thing that they kept referring to was the fact that there's so much exposition at the beginning of this film and going forward and back in time between present day and ancient Egypt that by the time you actually get into the story, you're already bored of the story, instead of just sort of setting out with I think they said start with the mummy attacking the first 2 people, then have your title credits, then have, however many days ago, this is what happened. It gets to a point then when Nick then meets Jekyll, and they've got Armanet sort of chained up in the basement, then do all of your ancient Egypt stuff as sort of a side story cutaway, and you'd have its narration and exposition there, and then go into your final act. I think if it had been edited that way, it would have been a much better film, even just keeping the same cast, story, actors, that's cast, like literally keeping everything else the same, but editing it that way would have made this a much better film, I think, because you would have been able to avoid the 12 different times the film gets an exposition sort of backstory covering the exact same thing every time, and I mean, you still could have kept the times that Nick has flashes of Armanet in the beginning, and sort of be like, okay, so what's this guy's connection, rah rah rah, and then it goes back and you just find out that he was the one that sort of unleashed her curse on the world, and that he is her chosen, and etc. Like, it would have been a much more engaging story structure for this film, and so obviously, therefore, the marketing was much better than the overall film itself. Now, having said that, and before I give my final score, I've got some little trivia points for you. So during the scene where Nick gets locked in the same room as Hyde, and Jenny is trying to get him out, Malik is chasing her. She hides in a library at one point, and while he's looking for her, she picks up and hits him with the book of Imhotep from the original trilogy. That being the 1999 trilogy. I say original with inverted commas there because back in like the 40s, I think it was, maybe 50s, there were 4 films called, I think it was like The Curse of the Mummy, or The Mummy's Curse, The Mummy's Hand, something or other. but there were 4 films that followed the same sort of storyline, the same mummy, and so therefore that is actually the original, like proper original, whereas the 1999s themselves were remakes. And also, I think I've covered this a little bit. Let me just quickly... Yeah, so I have covered my other sort of trivia point, but I will address it again, and we'll read exactly what I've got written here, just in case I've confused people. So, while a female mummy in this film makes for great diversity within the Dark Universe's lineup of villains, which obviously would have gone on to include the Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, etc. The original mummy from 1932 was Imhotep, played by Boris Karloff. The 1999 trilogy kept that mummy true to his form and his character, including his search for his reincarnated lover. This film, however, gender swaps the mummy, and the lover changes into the chosen one that will become the mortal vessel for the death god Set, effectively making this mummy's goal completely unnecessary, given how the film explains it. So they explain it as she craves more power so that she is able to ascend to the throne that she has been promised pretty much her entire life, up until the birth of her brother. And so she decides to summon the god of death, Set, into a mortal body to try and achieve this ultimate power that she craves. However, aside from potentially getting some gratitude for being given a mortal form, she is in no way guaranteeing herself the power that she craves to be able to ascend to her selfish ambitions. Releasing the death god into the world is only going to do what it does in this film, which is just create another villain. More to that point, given how the film ends with Nick having summoned Set into himself, which therefore they can explain as he then has control of it, and I guess that's where it was going, like she was going to summon Set and command this god to do her bidding, but then that goes against the fact that he's a god and she's supposed to worship him. Anyway, having selflessly summoned the death god into himself, Nick may have more control over it than Armanet would have, and therefore is then able to use Set's powers against her, is a way that they could explain that if that version of the mummy turns up further down the line. I know that Universal is still trying to find out how they could continue, and I believe an Invisible Man film is now the next one. It was going to be The Bride of Frankenstein, and again, had they done that, there is another female villain they could have used instead of just Frankenstein himself. However, having The Bride of Frankenstein means that Frankenstein also already needs to exist. But yeah, with Nick having the power of the death god, it's and having the power of the life and death, sure, he can kill people in an instant or resurrect whoever he deems worthy of resurrection, but other than those powers, he doesn't have a whole heap of control over anything else. Armanet is still the one that has the mummy's curse, and is therefore still technically more powerful, but also being corrupted by a death god Nick could have been, going forward, could also become a villain himself, which means that while this film was trying to set up a strong female villain for the Dark Universe, they ultimately ended up giving us a male one in the end anyway. So once again, I don't understand why they had to gender swap the character. If we really wanted Sophia Butella in this film, we could have just made her the reincarnated lover for Imhotep, which I think would have been better anyway. In that sense, if they had done that, what I would have liked to have seen is them to resurrect Imhotep. Imhotep actually manages to complete the ceremony of resurrecting his ancient Egyptian lover, and she's the one that brings sort of the curse of life and death to the universe. And my tablet has died. But from memory, I think it was like 72% is what I'd given this film. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Obviously, I could talk about this for ages. I chose this film for the Bad Film Review because of Halloween coming up and the Dark Universe having the characters that children generally dress up as for trick-or-treating being vampires, werewolves, mummies, zombies, that sort of thing. So I thought this fit very well for that theme. If you would like to see more videos, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. I will link my Bad Film Reviews playlist in the description down below as well, if you want to go and watch more of these. My social media links are also in the description down below as well as the source links for all of the research that I did other than watching the film for this video. So you can go and check all of that out, learn all of the trivia and history and stuff of the characters and stuff in this film, because it is kind of interesting. And yeah, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I'm not sure if I said that already. And until next time, night to A2, and I'll check you all later.